thank you, Mr. President. Well, it's a great privilege, a great honor to offer this resolution. You know, there's many things that folks could say about the life of Margaret Thatcher, but I think the thing that one would start with is that it's remarkable. And I'd just like to concentrate on three things. Is one, her standing for the special relationship between our country and Great Britain. You know, as the husband of an English national and someone who values that special relationship, I think of Margaret Thatcher standing shoulder to shoulder with our own President Ronald Reagan during the 1980s and standing up for something. And the second point I'd like to point out, which was the steadfast determination that communism would be defeated and that the West would be protected from that menace. And thirdly, I'd just like to mention my admiration for her stand for women's rights. You know, Margaret Thatcher was this exceptional female leader of the longest-serving prime minister of the 20th century, and I think the example she set for women's rights was truly remarkable. You know, I'm one who hopes that someday and someday soon we'll see a female president of the United States, and I think when that happens, I think our country will again owe a great debt to Margaret Thatcher. And I'll just conclude by saying one day I had the opportunity to meet another legendary leader, and that leader was Lee Kuan Yew, and he was of Singapore, and he and I were chatting about, or he was chatting to a group of us about what exceptional countries do at times of great challenge. And Lee Kuan Yew said, exceptional countries at times of great challenge will bring up exceptional leaders. And Lee Kuan Yew specifically mentioned the role that two exceptional countries, America and Great Britain, faced at a time of great challenge, and how they brought forward leaders like Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. And with Margaret Thatcher's funeral yesterday, Mr. President, I think it's a great time to offer her tremendous work, not just for that special relationship between America and Great Britain, not just for that key role she played in defeating communism, but also that key role she played in advancing women's rights. Thank you, Mr. President.
Margaret Thatcher has always been an inspiration to me. Years ago, when I started practicing law, I practiced in an area that was typically dominated by men. I'd oftentimes walk into a room and be the only woman in the room. And it was a very humbling experience for me. And I would look at how Margaret Thatcher would dominate a room and take control and be able to effectuate really great policy. So she's always been a source of inspiration for me. Mr. President, if I may read a quote from her, it's very brief.
Senator Brown.
It pays to know the enemy, not least because at some point, sometime, you may have the opportunity to turn him into a friend. Thank you, Mr. President.
I speak also in honor of this resolution and Margaret Thatcher, and with your permission, I would like to read a quote because I do feel she promoted women's rights. This is rather comical, but Mr. President, I would like to read another quote from her. In politics, if you want anything said, ask a man. If you want anything done, ask a woman. Thank you, Mr. President.
I would like to speak in favor of this resolution. I have known many iron ladies in my life, not the least of which was my grandmother, who served in the Idaho State Legislature and as the Idaho State Republican Party chairman during the same time that Margaret Thatcher served in the United Kingdom. It was a time when women were not viewed as the source of solutions, but I believe that she and others proved them wrong. And as I look forward to the future of my daughter, I am grateful to be able to look behind us to women such as my grandmother and Margaret Thatcher as women who believed and who knew and who held convictions and who ultimately changed the world. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to support this resolution commemorating the Iron Lady, the first and only woman Prime Minister of Great Britain, the longest serving Prime Minister of Great Britain in the 20th century. What an inspiration to women all over the world, that you can make a difference when times are tough. During the Falkland Islands War, my father was in a coma. And I remember visiting him in the hospital on a regular basis to give him the day-to-day update of what was going on. And when it was over, when he was well, I remember talking about that, and he remembered Margaret Thatcher, and he remembered the attack of the Sheffield and the sinking of that British ship by the Exocet missile. And it was her strength and that conflict, I believe, that gave him, a Navy man, retired Navy man, the strength to pull through that coma. She was a remarkable, remarkable individual, coming from very simple beginnings. No real political training, no great higher education, but she had conviction. Conviction and persistence and strength. And she exuded that strength everywhere she traveled and in every speech she gave. Truly, truly one of the most significant leaders, male or female, of the 20th century. So it's therefore quite fitting and proper that we honor the life of Margaret Thatcher here today. Thank you, Mr. President.